Welcome, everyone. This is Brother Doug with the Awakened by Yahuwah Fellowship Group. We are an assembly of believers in Yahushua the Messiah and our Creator, Yahuwah Almighty, and we are going to be studying today about one of Yahuwah's appointed times, one of his festivals, one of his high days, the day of Penecost, also known as Shavuot, also known as the Feast of Weeks, first fruits, has many different names. So we're going to be doing a general, very brief study on the Feast of Pentecost, and I'm kind of going to be giving some cross references out here to start off. So first, we're going to jump to one of the first instances you'll see in Scripture about it is in the book of Exodus, chapter 23. Which I'm going to share on my share screen over here. I'm going to see where I click on share screen. There we go. All right, so we're going to go to my eSword here, my little app I have on my desktop, and we're going to go to Leviticus 23, verses 17 to 20 to start off. Okay, so verse 17, you shall bring from your dwelling loaves as a heap offering. You shall bring from your dwelling loaves as heap offering 2 loaves. They shall be of 2/10 portions of fine flour. They shall be baked with leaven of the first fruits to Yahuwah. Now, we go up a little prior to that. You'll see a couple verses up here. Let's go to verses 15 to 16 to get the context of this. And you shall number yourself the day after the Sabbath, meaning the Sabbath that's part of the week of unleavened bread, from the day on which you shall offer the sheaf of the heap offering 7 full weeks. Then the next verse says, until the morrow, the day after the last week, you shall number 50 days, and shall bring a new meat offering to Yahuwah. And of course, we just read verse 17, you shall bring from your dwelling loaves as a heap offering 2 loaves. They shall be of 2/10 portions of fine flour. They shall be baked with leaven of the first fruits to Yahuwah. Verse 18, you shall bring with the loaves 7 unblemished lambs of a year old, and 1 calf of the herd, and 2 rams without blemish, and they shall be a whole burnt offering to Yahuwah. And their meat offerings and their drink offerings shall be a sacrifice, a smell of sweet savor to Yahuwah. Just a brief summary of that verse is talking about what the Levites and what the original Yashroelites were to do back then. There were certain sacrifices on high days and Sabbaths where Yahuwah would command them a specific order of a certain number of a specific animal. And so that's basically what verse 18 is saying. So go to verse 19, and they shall sacrifice 1 kid of the goats for a sin offering, and 2 lambs of a year old for a peace offerings with the loaves of the first fruits. So this specifically is talking about sacrificing 1 baby goat for a sin offering and 2 lambs of a year old for a peace offering. So they have specific animals for specific sacrifices. There's a peace offering, there's a sin offering, there's meat offerings, there's drink offerings where they would, have a holy, actually, correct word, set apart vessel or set apart cup of wine that they would present for the drink offering in the temple. So just for anyone that's kind of new to the whole Levitical system that was in place in the Tanakh, just to kind of understand that. Verse 20 says, and the priest shall place them with the loaves of the first fruits and offering before Yahuwah with 2 lambs. They shall be set apart to Yahuwah. They shall belong to the priest that brings them. Now, if you read in the Torah, and if you're familiar with the Old Testament, there's something in the law and Yahuwah's commandments about whatever the priest present to him as a meat offering, as a sin offering, those animals, that same animal they would eat in Yahuwah's presence. So just kind of a little bit of education about Yahuwah's commandments there. Verse 21, and you shall call this day a convocation, or in our modern English, it should say a gathering, a set apart gathering. It shall be set apart to you. You shall do no servile work on it. It is a perpetual ordinance throughout your generations in your habitation. And as far as servile work, I'm under the understanding, I could be wrong, servile work is a specific type of work where you serve someone and, bringing food to someone or doing work for someone. You shouldn't be doing that on that day. I'll let Shoshana and anyone else jump in if they have a better definition of that word.
It's like your job.
Okay.
I also wanted to bring out the type of bread that is baked on Shavuot, because the bread is not leavened as normally you would see. It's leavened bread. And who are leavened? We are. Therefore, when it talks about the feast of first fruits, it talks about loaves baked with leaven represent the first fruits. And we know from Revelation 7 that there are 144,000 of them that become the bride of Yahushua. And I just wanted to point that out about the leavened loaves, because we are accepted in our leaven, in our sin, which he washes away and cleanses us. And I did a song about it, which says we've been cleansed from sin for our wedding day. And I just thought of that, because it's true. We are actually cleansed from sin on our wedding day.
Okay. All right. So now we're going to jump onto a different book of the Tanakh. We're going to go to Exodus chapter 23, verse 16 here. So that's chapter 23, verse 16. And it says, and you shall keep the feast of the harvest of the first fruits of your labors, whatsoever you shall have sown in your field, and the feast of completion at the end of the year, in the gathering in of your fruits of your fields. And I could be wrong, but I believe the ending feast of the year he's referring to is tabernacles. So there's two feasts being spoken of in Exodus 23:16. First, it talks about the Feast of First Fruits, aka the Feast of Weeks. The Feast of Penecost is what it's named in the Brit Hadashah, which we will get to later. So what I see here is that we are to keep, it says to keep the Feast of First Fruits of your labor. So whatever your increase is, the first fruit of your increase, whatsoever you shall have sown in your fields. So basically the increase of your crops, what has been yielded, you are to give to the Father. You are to give to Yahuwah. So, and then it starts talking, then towards the end of the verse, it talks about the Feast of Tabernacles. So, let's see, let's go to chapter 34 of Exodus and to verse 22. And it says, and you shall keep to me the Feast of Weeks. So right here, it's named the Feast of Weeks, but it's the same feast. The beginning of the wheat harvest and the Feast of Ingathering in the middle of the year. So the Feast of Ingathering is actually in the middle of the year, which is interesting. And so the Feast of Weeks is supposed to be in the beginning of the wheat harvest, and then you have the Feast of Ingathering in the middle of the year. Very interesting. So that was Exodus 34, verse 22. Now we're going to go to the book of Numbers, chapter 28, verse 26 here. Oh, no, actually, you know what? We'll go to Deuteronomy first. Let's try to keep it somewhat. Oh, no, Numbers is before Deuteronomy. What am I saying? All right. Numbers chapter 28, verse 26. And so this is another cross-reference I have here. It says, and on the day of the new corn, which, the Septuagint sometimes says new corn, when it talks about the grain, when it talks about, because corn used to be a term that they would refer to as when you first get, the grain yielding, the beginning of the year. So when you see in Exodus, I think it's chapter 12, the Septuagint will say, the month of new corn. So grain and corn are kind of like the same thing in the Septuagint. So Numbers 28:26 says, and on the day of new corn, when you shall offer a new sacrifice at the festival of weeks to Yahuwah, there shall be to you a set-apart gathering. You shall do no servile work. So basically what it's saying here, it's a high day. You don't do servile work. And you're supposed to offer a sacrifice to Yahuwah on that day. Now, obviously, we're not farmers. We don't have our first fruit increase. There's no temple in place right now. Also, there's a transference right now in the Melchizedek priesthood, but we kind of don't have time to go into all that in the book of Hebrews, but you can read that for yourself. I believe it's Hebrews chapter 8 and chapter 9 refer to that. And Paul basically explains that, we are in the Melchizedek priesthood, but if Yahusha was on earth, he would not be a priest. So meaning Yahusha forever is the Melchizedek priest, but if he was on earth, he would not be a priest. And there's priests on earth. So just to simplify that for any Christians listeners out there, Paul was not promoting that the Levitical priesthood was never going to come back. He's basically saying that since Yahusha is not on earth and he's a heavenly priest, we are in a Melchizedek priesthood. But if he was on earth, which he will be in earth in the millennial, that he would not be a priest, and there will be priests that offer gifts according to the law. So he's actually saying that there is still a Levitical priesthood, but it's not right now. So I hope that didn't confuse anyone. So that was Numbers chapter 28, verse 26, and the important parts I see here is it's on the day of new grain, and it's a specific day of the day of the Feast of Weeks that you're supposed to offer a new sacrifice at the festival of weeks to Yahuwah. There shall be to you a set-apart gathering. So you're also to gather with other believers. And obviously you don't do servile work. So hopefully that explains it there, what Yahuwah is commanding to all Yashrael, to his people to do. And Yashrael is the Hebrew word for Israel, just people that don't know that terminology. And let's see here. It's actually the proper name, which has been mistranslated as, in the modern Hebrew, Yisrael or Israel. It actually should be Yashrael. So let's see here. Now we're going to go to Numbers chapter 28. So we're going to stay in 28, but go down a couple of verses. Go from 27, verse 27 to verse 30. It says, and you shall bring whole burnt offerings for a sweet-smelling savor to Yahuwah, 2 calves of the herd. So, calves are, what we know as cows. So 2 cows of the herd, 1 ram, 7 lambs without blemish. So notice that according to Yahuwah's commandments, it's very specific how many of each animal and what animal they're supposed to sacrifice in the Levitical priesthood. And this being part of Yahuwah's law. Then it says in verse 28, their meat offering shall be fine flour mingled with oil. That's another commandment that Yahuwah does a lot when referring to these sacrifices, a lot of time there's flour being involved, flour with oil being mixed together. And it says, there shall be 3/10 deals for one calf, so specific measurement for this animal, for one calf, one cow, and 2/10 deals for one ram. And then it goes to verse 29, a tenth for each lamb separately. So Yahuwah makes a distinction. You are to put a tenth for each lamb separately. So very, very key in that verse. For the 7 lambs and a kid of the goat. So notice that there's 7 lambs and only 1 kid of the goat. I find that ratio pretty interesting. For a transgression offering to make atonement for you, beside the perpetual whole burnt offering. And you shall offer to me their meat offering. They shall be to you unblemished. Very important, unblemished. You can't have a speckle mark. Can't have any defect on the animal. And you shall offer their drink offerings. So.
Hey, Doug?
Yes.
Mine says that you offer 2 young bulls, not cows.
Okay. All right. Well, bulls are a type of cow, I guess. So I guess.
Bulls are the male.
Okay. All right. So I guess.
A cow is female.
All right. Yeah, that's weird. Well, I guess what I could do right now is look up the word calf and see what a calf actually is, if that's a male or female.
Calf could be male or female, but
Okay.
mine specifies 2 young bulls.
Okay. All right, I like that a little bit better, a little bit more specific. Okay.
Welcome, everyone. This is Brother Doug of the Assembly, the Wicked by Yahuwah Assembly.
Sorry about that. I had a technical difficulty, but Shoshana just said that her translation actually says a bull, so it makes it more, actually more distinguished between the fact that it's male, not female. So I kind of like that. We're actually closing up. 10 minutes left of this study. We are going to have to do a part 2, everyone. We have limited time on these studies, and my warning is showing me we got less than 10 minutes left. So please stay tuned to part 2, guys. We will be going into more verses about the Feast of Weeks, so stay tuned to the part 2 of the Feast of Weeks study. This is Brother Doug saying shalom with my sister Shoshana, my brother Dennis, and my sister. Please stay tuned. All right.